Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, you daily dive into the news. It is Tuesday. I've got an exciting update at the end of this video, but we also have a lot to talk about today, starting with this. We've got to dig into this insane speech by Trump and Hegseth that really appears to have the military's top brass rattled, because it is just weird and crazy and cringe moment after one another. And arguably more importantly, it signals what might happen to the country pretty soon. Because last week you had Defense or War Secretary Pete Hegseth ordering hundreds of the military's top commanders to Marine Corps base Quantico in Virginia for a speech today. The topic leading up, it was a mystery, which, really confused a lot of people because one, it's unclear why he just didn't do this virtually, which would have saved a lot of money and travel time. And two, the announcement, it came just kind of out of nowhere with little time to prepare. But with that, according to at least the Daily Mail, who said they spoke to two Pentagon staffers, it was because of Pete Hegseth's state of mind. And according to them, he's been, quote, crawling out of his skin in recent weeks out of fear that he'll be assassinated like Charlie Kirk. With them then reportedly adding that he's been erupting in tirades, raging at staffers, and obsessing about matters related to his security. One even reportedly saying there's a manic quality about him, or let me rephrase, an even more manic quality, which is really saying something. And you had both sources explaining that they felt an extra duty to temper his abrupt decisions, but that he, quote, takes things personally when challenged, like full-blown tantrums. But with whatever was happening behind the scenes, you had Hegseth summoning generals, admirals, officers, pretty much everyone above a certain rank for this meeting, which was already extremely unusual. But then things got even stranger once he opened his mouth.
To our enemies, F-A-F-O.
And for the two of you that don't know, that's fuck around and find out. And that bit, it pretty much kind of summed up the tone and the tenor of this event pretty nicely. Because you had Hegseth coming right out of the gate with some very aggressive rhetoric.
To ensure peace, we must prepare for war. From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: warfighting. Preparing for war and preparing to win. Unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war. No one here wants war. But it's because we love peace.
You had Hegseth saying that the United States is the most lethal and effective military power on earth, but it finds itself in an increasingly dangerous world. And he called this a moment of urgency, saying that enemies gather, threats grow. And so in terms of concrete changes, he called for increased spending on pretty much everything: troops, weapons, vehicles, AI, you name it. But then he also spent the vast majority of his speech arguing that about what the military really needs is the right people and the right culture. And to him, that means so-called de-wokifying the armed forces.
For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. We became the woke department.
With Hegseth clarifying that he doesn't want to kick all women out of the military, he just wants to hold everybody to high gender-neutral standards. And if a woman can meet that, great, but if not, too bad. And then he clarified again that the military doesn't actually need new standards, it just needs the hard-nosed culture to enforce existing ones. So this is, you have critics countering that there's no evidence that standards have been lowered for women or racial minorities, and if anything, the military has become more effective because it's become more diverse. But according to Hegseth's telling, the US has lost war after war since 1945 because its military has become infected with social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that shit.
Right. And then his next target that he really harped on was big people.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon. This also means grooming standards. No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We don't have a military full of Nordic pagans.
And so to professionalize the War Department, he announced directives mandating regular physical fitness tests and grooming standards for almost everybody, even if they're not in active combat roles. With Hegseth then calling this Liberation Day for the military, and he declared that leaders are now free to enforce rigorous standards, whether that means cursing at soldiers or even getting physical with them.
That's why today, at my direction, we're undertaking a full review of the department's definitions of so-called toxic leadership, bullying, and hazing, to empower leaders to enforce standards without fear of retribution or second guessing. We are overhauling an Inspector General process, the IG, that has been weaponized, putting complainers, ideologues, and poor performers in the driver's seat. We're doing the same with the equal opportunity and military equal opportunity policies, the EO and MEO at our department. No more frivolous complaints, No more anonymous complaints. No more repeat complainants. No more smearing reputations. No more endless waiting. No more legal limbo. No more sidetracking careers. No more walking on eggshells.
Right, and so you saw many hearing that and saying that sounds like he's essentially giving officers a blank check to abuse their subordinates. Right, and that is the Pentagon has long struggled to root out a well-documented culture of racism, sexual assault, and even rape. But with this, you had Hegseth promising that racism and sexual harassment, they're still illegal and will be ruthlessly enforced, with him adding,
but telling someone to shave or get a haircut or to get in shape or to fix their uniform or to show up on time or to work hard, that's exactly the kind of discrimination we want.
You also had Hegseth declaring that soldiers are now free to fight the way they need to without bureaucrats tying their hands.
No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters.
And again, you had people seeing that as him essentially giving soldiers a blank check to commit war crimes with impunity. But then finally, he claimed to know that the overwhelming majority of people in that room agree with everything that he's saying and invited anyone who doesn't to resign. So, and also on that note, he's already promised to fire 20% of the military's roughly 800 generals and admirals. And so understandably, many of those in the room were reportedly afraid that he'd fire them right there, though Hegseth, he didn't end up doing that. And what you ended up seeing was that throughout the entire speech, the crowd remained almost totally silent and stone-faced, right, upholding their commitment to be apolitical even in the face of such hyper-partisan comments. That said, behind the scenes, some people were a little more vocal, with reportedly 8 current and former officials telling the Washington Post that multiple top officers, including Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane, are privately critical of the new direction that Hegseth's taking the military, with them reportedly taking issue with the new national defense strategy, especially with how it reorients focus away from foreign threats and toward domestic ones, as well as all the partisan language in the document, including direct mentions of Joe Biden. And you had several sources adding that dissent during the drafting process is normal, but the number of officials concerned and the depth of their criticism, it's unusual, right? And so that was Hegseth. And then you had Trump's, which was, it felt definitely low energy for him, though it was still rambly, but it also had some standout moments. So as far as the ramble and the scope, I mean, he was talking about naming the Department of War, naming the Gulf of America, supposedly ending all the wars in the world, signing generals and admirals commissions himself instead of an auto pen, not getting the Nobel Peace Prize, his tariffs, how he won the election, and how he's mistreated by the press. Also, the man fucking loves paper, apparently. But easily, the most explosive remarks came when he explained how the military would become America first.
Only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms.
With Trump then making it very clear who the culprit for that invasion is, the radical left Democrats.
What they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places, and we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city.
Or with Trump claiming that everybody in those cities, they love the military being there, and when they don't, it's because they were paid off by George Soros and others. And so, you know, with this, well, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, reactions. This isn't just a news show, it's a conversation. So quickly, just add my opinion here. This felt deranged. I know a lot of what he said are things that he's said before or kind of close to, but in this specific setting with the audience that he had, this felt like a very different thing. It really seemed like he was declaring war on American cities. It really seemed like there is a plan to weed out everyone except the loyalists. And unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to wait to see in the coming days, weeks, months, and years is how much of this is a kind of chest puffing LARP and how much of this is a successful crackdown that I think many would call authoritarian in nature. Also, sad news that Hegseth said that Trump can't be a general. And then there's even more we're gonna dive into in just a minute. But first, let me say, you know, have you ever walked out of a meeting thinking, cool, I just survived, but what did we actually decide? Because that is where today's sponsor, Plaude AI, saves your butt. It's basically the world's smartest meeting secretary, slim enough to hide in your wallet. Because your phone, it wasn't built for this. It dies, it gets notifications mid-call, and it definitely can't pick up 8 people talking over each other. But Plaude can. 4 studio-grade mics, noise canceling, up to 16 feet of clean audio pickup, and it runs 30 to 50 hours straight. Meanwhile, your phone's begging for a charger after one Zoom. And unlike your Notes app graveyard full of half thoughts, Plaude actually gives you something useful. Right? Transcripts with speaker labels, highlights, to-dos, and insights you can share with your team. Maybe you forgot what your boss promised in last week's meeting? Ask Plaude and boom, it pulls it up. Maybe you need to draft a follow-up email. Want to brainstorm ideas without bugging your team? Ask Plaude. Privacy is also covered too, right? This isn't Big Brother, right? End-to-end encryption plus All this, I mean, translation, your data is yours. Plus, it looks so slick. I mean, people think that it's a luxury card. Meanwhile, it feels like I just bought myself extra IQ points, especially because I feel like I'm great at so many things, but my mind, it gets so scattered, especially once I'm juggling too many things. So hey, hit that link in the description or scan the QR code and use code DeFranco for 20% off with their selected products for Prime Day special. But then next up in the news today, it actually starts with a question, and that is, with how crazy things feel in America right now, are you afraid to go to large events in public? And connected to that question, we've seen political creators here and there canceling things individually, as well as big creators like Hasan Piker, Valkyrae, Cutie Cinderella, and others announcing that they're going to be skipping TwitchCon later this month over safety concerns. And the latest person to drop out was Hasan, who during a stream announced that he wasn't going to go to the event, and he fleshed out his reasoning.
I miss the social Hasan era. There is unfortunately an obvious setback there because of, one, all the political incidents that have taken place, and two, how those political incidents have had some pretty significant consequences in how much I can go out in the real world and socialize with other people. As I said already, I'm not going to TwitchCon, not because I'm worried about my own safety, but I'm literally not going to TwitchCon because I'm worried about the safety of others. I don't want to put them in the fucking crosshairs if some psycho freak decides, like, I'm going to go there. I'm very publicly not going to TwitchCon for that reason.
Right, and that decision, it came after Valkyrae and Cutie Cinderella made it very clear over the last 2 weeks that they would also not be attending the event, with their initial thoughts popping up on their podcast Whine About It.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I've been so anxious and scared and sad this whole past week with everything that's been going on for a multitude of reasons that I told Cutie, I was like, I'm kind of afraid to go to TwitchCon.
Yeah. We're in a bit of a conundrum with TwitchCon. We may... Listen, it's not... I have...
It's not you, it's us.
It's not you, it's us. I have told... Because we're supposed to do Whine About It live at TwitchCon. Love Twitch for supporting our show. I have given them a soft, hey, we're in a bit of a panic mode right now.
Will we ever stop panicking?
That's the problem. I don't know if
think
we're
we
being...
will.
Because I don't feel... The problem is right now, I don't... Respectfully, I don't feel irrational about it. I feel very
I think it's valid.
scared.
Yeah, it just takes one person
Yeah.
to, you know.
Right, and then they go on to mention Ari Sato, who is a Japanese live streamer that was stabbed to death in the middle of a stream by someone local media called an anti-fan. So with things like that, as well as the killing of Charlie Kirk and politicians, it's obviously been at the front of a lot of people's minds, which led to Valkyrae saying last week,
I'm just really uncomfortable with the world right now. Just so you guys know, Cutie and I are not going to TwitchCon anymore. We did back out. America is in a weird spot. Weird things are happening, and it's just, I don't feel safe. I open up, see the news, and then I'm like, holy moly, what is happening?
and in general, there was a sentiment that there's a big overlap of people who hate watch streamers and those who are extremely politically active on platforms like Twitter. And here's how Pokimane put it last week.
Here's the way I view it, especially with all the recent news surrounding Charlie Kirk. And of course, a lot of political talk happens on Twitter. And also for us, people like me, Ray, Cutie, other female streamers, the people who feel the most negative and most passionately hateful towards us also tend to be on Twitter. And the streaming and Twitter community just have a lot of overlap. So sometimes it's just scary. And when you see that kind of negativity, you're like, do I want to tell people where I'm going to be in person? I actually don't know. Don't really like using Twitter too much because I don't... when I look at the replies, I'm like, who are these people talking to? I sure as hell don't think it's me. I'm like, you guys are not my community. How do you even know me? Or you post a selfie, people start losing their
Right, and with that, you had people saying, you can just look to the replies to the news that Valkyrae and QT weren't going to see the overlap. Or with people posting things like, makes sense, dating Hasan puts a huge target on your back because he supports terrorists and call for violence on others, Twitch should ban him. With that appearing to be in reference to claims that Valkyrae and Hasan are dating. Right, and while I don't care or know if that's true, I guess what matters is that the perception is that they are, and it puts her in danger. You also had others like streamer Tectone, who's recently become extremely vocal about culture and politics, seeming to use the opportunity to push the narrative that all the recent shooters are left-leaning and figures like Hasan are to blame. In reaction to Hasan not going to TwitchCon, he wrote, Hasan, you're the one who's causing these consequences the most out of any streamer on the platform. Hasan and people like Hasan have been pushing violent rhetoric and supporting terrorists for years. He knows the dangers he has caused for others. He's now too afraid to face the very beast he's created. And then along with that, you had a number of people mocking the idea that Hasan was comfortable going to a protest, which inherently have a level of risk, and now he doesn't want to go to TwitchCon. So then with that, you had others pushing back a counterpoint saying that things things have dramatically changed in America since then, as well as the fact that Hassan says that he's doing this to protect his fans. But no matter where you stand on this, what you're seeing is Twitch trying to reassure people that the event will be perfectly safe, with CEO Dan Clancy saying on a live stream,
just in terms of safety and security at TwitchCon in light of recent events. So I want to be very clear. We take security at our events like TwitchCon extremely seriously. Every year, we build on a successful approach to TwitchCon safety and security, particularly as we become aware of new or emerging security or safety challenges. So we have teams focused on this year round.
With Clancy then going on to add how they limit who can attend and try to force attendees to behave appropriately with agreements in place when you buy a ticket. But that is, you had big community figures like Asmon Gold not buying that. Or with Asmon pointing to an incident that happened last year at TwitchCon, writing, last year, NMP, Lol, and Wake were sexually assaulted by a streamer, and Twitch didn't press charges or pursue any form of legal action against him. If I was a woman, I would never go to TwitchCon. But with all that said, as this whole situation continues to develop, I'd really love to know your thoughts and reactions here. Because one is, do you feel safe in public? Do you feel safe in public going to any sort of these events? And then also, if you were a public figure at all, like, would you be making appearances at events like TwitchCon or maybe some sort of political conference? Where's your head at right now? I'd love to hear from you. But then next up in the news, Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu have agreed on a plan for Gaza. And if Hamas doesn't agree, Trump says that Israel has his full support to finish what it started, which of course, according to many experts, is committing genocide. Right? And with all that, Israel and Netanyahu facing growing international condemnation. I mean, Netanyahu, he arrived in the US a few days ago for a meeting of the United Nations, and he had to take a longer flight to avoid countries that might arrest him for alleged war crimes. Also, you had several new countries recognizing Palestinian statehood despite his objection, and you even had dozens of delegates walking out during his speech, which left him addressing a mostly empty room. Right? But all of that is seemingly meaningless when you also have the American president welcoming him to the White House. Right? And with the two meeting yesterday, you had Netanyahu agreeing to Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza, noting that it achieves Israel's war aims, and adding,
it will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
And then, of course, with that, you had Trump saying that Hamas failing to agree to this deal, it would mean that Israel has his full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. And that was something that Netanyahu was very happy to hear.
If Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
But as we wait to see how this is going to play out, we should also talk about, well, what exactly is in this plan? Or because it's a 20-point proposal reportedly drawn up by Trump's son-in-law and real estate developer Jared Kushner, Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, who also has a background in real estate development, and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, who is perhaps best known internationally as an architect of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And this proposal starts by declaring that Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors, and adding next that Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. It then goes on to say that both sides agreeing to the proposal would result in an immediate end to the war, the suspension of all military operations, and the freezing of the battle lines where they are, as well as the return of all remaining hostages, living and dead, in exchange for Gazans held by Israel. The plan also notably calls for ensuring humanitarian aid into Gaza, says that Israel will not occupy or annex the territory, and affirms that, quote, no one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. And then as far as Hamas, members who, quote, commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons would be given amnesty and allowed to leave Gaza. Right? And that being part of a broader disarmament and demilitarization effort that would also have the group agreeing to not have any role in the governance of the territory, which then brings up the question of, well, who would be in charge? And well, at least according to this plan, the Israeli military would gradually withdraw and they'd hand over control to an international peacekeeping force led by Arab countries. But also, notably, it would be allowed to maintain a security perimeter presence that will remain until Gaza is properly secure from any resurgent terror threat. It was also not clear what this perimeter presence would look like or how and when Gaza would be considered properly secure. But also, in any case, while this peacekeeping force would provide security, Gaza would be governed under the, quote, temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee. A committee that would be overseen and supervised by the so-called Board of Peace. Right? And that would be a board headed and chaired by none other than Donald Trump, with Tony Blair also getting a spot. Right? And according to the plan, it would not only be aimed at creating a system that serves the people of Gaza, but one that is conducive subversive to attracting investment. And so with that, the 11th point in this 20-point plan, it says a special economic zone will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. And the one before it saying a Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. But with the plan also noting that many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development deals have been crafted by well-meaning international groups. Right? You may remember we actually talked about one of those proposals, which reportedly went around the White House. It talked about relocating Palestinians and planned to turn the enclave's western waterfront into a string of resorts called the Gaza Trump Riviera and Islands. But then with all that, this board and this committee, hypothetically, they would be temporary. With the plan saying that the Palestinian Authority, which is the body overseeing some parts of the West Bank, it wouldn't be involved until it has successfully carried out a number of reforms. Or with the plan saying that when the reform program is, quote, faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. And with that, you actually had the Palestinian Authority welcoming what they called Trump's sincere and determined efforts to end the war and affirmed its confidence in his ability to find a path toward peace. Right? And that is also claiming that it wanted a modern, democratic, and non-militarized Palestinian state. And then saying that they're committed to implementing reforms, including updating textbooks that critics argue demonize Israel, abolish payments to families of prisoners and martyrs, and establish a unified social welfare system subject to international auditing. But also notably there, you already had Netanyahu saying that he views the idea of these reforms actually being carried out successfully as almost impossible, with some arguing that he may see this as kind of a loophole. Right? And then on top of that, he's also already straight up rejected the idea that this plan could ever lead to a Palestinian state, despite it putting it forward as a possibility. With Netanyahu claiming today he has absolutely not agreed to that and adding, we did say one thing, that we would forcibly resist a Palestinian state. And so with all that, you had one political scientist at Hebrew University in Jerusalem explaining there is a lot of gray area in the deal, and this is how Netanyahu wanted it. He can tell the right wing he will never fully withdraw, and he can show Hamas as the one saying no, and he can continue the war. Also, you had the Israeli opposition leader saying he supported the plan, but is worried that there were holes in it that could be exploited to keep fighting, saying Netanyahu is a seasoned and exhausting expert in saying yes, but, adding usually he says the yes in Washington, standing in front of the cameras at the White House, feeling like a groundbreaking statesman, and the but when he returns home and the base reminds him who's boss. Right? And then with all that, of course, there's also the question of, is there a chance that Hamas actually agrees to this? Because this is the type of plan that Hamas said in the past that it would never be on board for. But you also reportedly have the group telling mediators that they'll review it in good faith, and there's some who say that the pressure is so high right now that there is actually a chance. So of course, even if they do, there's still a lot that's unclear with this plan, and ironing out the details, it would likely require further talks. Within some, worrying that any holdup would potentially be used by Israel to argue that Hamas isn't actually cooperating and that it has no choice but to continue the war. But for now, that is where we are, and as always, we'll continue to see how this plays out. And then there's more we've got to dive into, but first, let me say, missing a business call is basically like swiping left on free money. It's like handing your competitors a free win. So don't score points for your rival. Use today's sponsor, Quo. They're formerly OpenPhone, and they're the smarter way to run your business. Quo is the #1 modern business phone system built for 2025, not 1995. Forget juggling phones like you're living a double life. Quo, it works right from your phone or your computer. Your whole team can share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, faster responses, happier customers. And Quo's not just a phone system, it's a smart system. Built-in AI logs calls, writes summaries, and even sets up next steps. And hey, you can't answer the phone? Quo's AI agent can, qualifying leads, routing calls to the right person, and making sure no customer is ever left hanging. Even after hours, Quo's got your back. It keeps the lights on while you actually sleep. And from solo hustlers to growing teams, Quo helps businesses stay connected and look professional. That's why over 90,000 businesses are already running on Quo. Translation, it works. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. So hey, get started for free, plus 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/Phil. That's QUO.com/Phil, or scan that QR code. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. But the next up in the news, by the time that you're watching this, the government may have actually already shut down, because Congress has until midnight tonight to reach a deal on a spending bill to fund the government and avoid a shutdown. But with just hours to go as I'm making this, neither side has budged from their demands, and all signs they're pointing to a shutdown. Right? So you have the Republican majority pushing a short-term stopgap bill that'll extend the current funding levels through November 21st, giving lawmakers more time to hash out a long-term agreement. And that proposal did pass in the House just a few weeks ago, with only one Democrat joining Republicans. But then the narrow Republican majority in the Senate, they've been unable to break the 60-vote filibuster. And there you're seeing Democratic leaders saying they won't sign on to any legislation unless it extends key Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire soon and reverses Medicaid cuts made under Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Or with Democrats saying if that doesn't happen, 15 million people could lose their health coverage, and 24 million could see their insurance premiums increase by 75%. But Republican leaders, they refuse to make any concessions, arguing that the healthcare demands are just a matter of policy. Now, notably here, some key Republican negotiators have said that they would be willing to discuss subsidy extensions, but only if the Democrats agree to pass a stopgap bill first. But one, it's very unlikely that the party is going to want to repeal the Medicaid cuts that they just enacted. And two, Democratic leaders have said that they just don't trust the Republicans to honor a spoken agreement to hold future negotiations on healthcare issues in exchange for passing the stopgap bill now. And so they want their demands written into the spending package, and by agreeing to a stopgap bill without that, they think they'd just be giving up key negotiating leverage. Or with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer explaining,
"We think when they say later, they mean never. We have to do it now, first because of the timing issue, and second, because now is the time we can get it done."
And so then, with both sides at a stalemate, we saw Trump holding a last-minute meeting with party leaders yesterday. A move that, this is a very key thing, comes after Trump canceled a similar meeting with Democratic leadership last week, claiming then that their demands were unserious and ridiculous. But as you might have expected, and as you know because I'm making this video right now, this latest meeting, it didn't produce any results. And you had leaders on both sides leaving the White House, blaming each other for what seems like an inevitable government shutdown. Or with Schumer accusing Republicans of punting the healthcare issue, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries telling reporters,
"The government shuts down. It's because Republicans have decided to shut the government down and hurt the American people."
But on the other side, you had Republicans accusing Democrats of holding the government hostage over an unrelated policy matter that the Republicans had agreed to discuss if they passed the stopgap bill. Though then, at the same time, you also had Trump painting a different picture, telling reporters,
"If there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?"
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they wanted to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits.
And Trump's claim that Democrats are trying to give health care benefits to illegal immigrants, it's actually a narrative that's been pushed by top Republican leaders. People like Vice President Vance and House Speaker Mike Johnson, though Democrats and experts, they've said that that's a false claim. Because illegal immigrants, they're actually banned from buying health care plans on government exchanges and thus receiving Obamacare subsidies. And that is, they're also ineligible for Medicaid, Medicare, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. But then also, the Democrats' budget proposal doesn't change any of that. All it does is restore Obamacare subsidies to certain groups of lawfully present immigrants who used to receive those benefits but were cut off under the BBB. But despite that, we've seen Republicans running with the false claims, and Trump taking it even further yesterday by sharing just an absolutely wild AI-generated video of Schumer and Jeffries that's been widely criticized as being at least racist.
Look, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, you know, at least for a while until they learn English and they realize they hate us too.
And that, unsurprisingly, resulted in a ton of backlash, with many saying that it was offensive and that it's just insane for the president of the United States to be posting this kind of shit. And all of that is the leaders themselves hitting back, with Schumer writing on X, "If you think your shutdown is a joke, it just proves what we all know. You can't negotiate. You can only throw tantrums." And then you had Jeffries going two routes. One was posting "bigotry will get you nowhere" and adding that Democrats are not backing down, as well as then posting this photo of Trump with Epstein and saying, "This is real," in response to the deepfake video. But as far as what happens next, the Senate is set to vote again at some point this afternoon on each party's spending proposals. But really, unless there's some last-minute dramatic change, both are expected to fail. And then if the government does shut down, there could be some insanely consequential and lasting impacts. Because as we talked about last week, typically during shutdowns, non-essential government employees are furloughed on temporary unpaid leave and then given back pay when the shutdown ends. But Trump and his administration, they've said that they'd use this shutdown to fire, not furlough, thousands of government workers. Now that said, not every agency would be impacted, and many employees will be forced to continue working through the shutdown without pay unless Congress can agree to a deal. And that includes active duty service members, people who work in immigration and drug enforcement, Secret Service employees, air traffic controllers, and TSA workers, among others. And then as far as how everyday Americans could be impacted, the shutdown's not going to affect essential services like mail delivery or social safety net benefits like Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. But some services around those benefits could be disrupted, such as if someone needs a new Social Security or Medicaid card. But all of this is, there are also some incredibly important government agencies that are running low on funds, and their operations, they could be seriously impacted if the shutdown lasts for a long time. And that includes things like the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, Infants and Children, or WIC, which reportedly doesn't have enough funding left to accept new applicants starting tomorrow. And so with that, you have experts saying that if the shutdown goes for even a week, families already enrolled would be at risk too. Also, while the broader food stamps program won't be affected immediately, there could be disruptions if a shutdown drags on. Also, while FEMA employees will largely be available for any emergencies or disasters, there are concerns about funding sources that could impact disaster relief reimbursements to states. And then, of course, there are the economic impacts of a government shutdown, right? And that's also something we touched on last week. But the main thing is it turns out they're just not super great for the economy. And of course, all of this, it's important to keep in mind since the longest partial shutdown the country has ever seen was during Trump's last administration, right? With that one beginning just before Christmas in 2018 and ending in late January of 2019, which set a record for 34 full days. But of course, like with so much, for now, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens and how long it's gonna last. But then next up, in a very different news, Hollywood agencies are now apparently after this very hot star, Tilly Norwood. But the thing with Tilly, some would say it's the biggest thing, is that she is not a real person. She's AI. And she was introduced to the industry over the weekend during the Zurich Film Festival by her creator, Eline van der Velden. And Eline, if you're not familiar, she's a Dutch actress and producer based out of London who started an AI production company called Particle 6, which now is a spin-off AI talent studio that created Tilly. And she recently said that some agencies might be more open to Tilly these days, explaining, "We were in a lot of boardrooms around February time and everyone was like, no, this is nothing, it's not going to happen. Then by May, people were like, we need to do something with you guys. When we first launched Tilly, people were like, what's that? And now we're going to be announcing which agency is going to be representing her in the next few months." Right? And you also had Eline saying that she wants Tilly to be the next Scarlett Johansson or Natalie Portman. Right? And according to reports, the studio who made her creates AI characters that are developed with complete backstories, distinct voices, evolving narrative arcs, and fully realized personality. So they can apparently engage in unscripted conversations, do monologues, and respond in real time to adapt to different audiences. And in fact, on Tilly's Instagram, you can see her doing screen tests, action sequences, and even doing a parody of Sydney Sweeney's Jeans video. But that's also not where it ends. In July, she posted that she landed her first role in a comedy sketch. So that sketch was really just a fully AI-generated comedic ad about using AI to develop television, which part of the plot is execs deciding to cast Tilly.
Tilly Norwood, 100% AI generated.
By some company called Particle 6.
She'll do anything I say. I'm already in love. Girl next door vibes.
Right, and so as far as the reaction in general, it has been, what the actual fuck? And not only around her just existing in general, but the fact that she could get representation with actors saying things like, hope all the actors rep by the agents that does this drop their ass. How gross, read the room. As well as, and what about the hundreds of living young women whose faces were composited together to make her? You couldn't hire any of them? You also had many saying they weren't surprised at the first so-called major AI actor is a young woman that they can fully control and make them do whatever they want. Right, some framing this as ravaging our ecosystem to build a girl who can't age or say no. And all this criticism, it just kept building and building. And this morning, in fact, you had SAG, the Actors Union, condemning Tilly, saying that the guild is opposed to human performers being replaced by synthetic ones, and adding, to be clear, Tilly Norwood is not an actor. It's a character generated by a computer program that was trained on the work of countless professional performers without permission or compensation. It has no life experience to draw from, no emotion, and from what we've seen, audiences aren't interested in watching computer-generated content untethered from the human experience. And saying it doesn't solve any problem. It creates the problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work, jeopardizing performers' livelihoods and devaluing human artistry. But already you have Eline responding, addressing some of the backlash and taking to Tilly's Instagram to publish a statement saying, she is not a replacement for a human being, but a creative work, a piece of art. Like many forms of art before her, she sparks conversation, and that in itself shows the power of creativity. And adding, I see AI not as a replacement for people, but as a new tool, a new paintbrush. Just as animation, puppetry, or CGI open fresh possibilities without taking away from live acting, AI offers another way to imagine and build stories, saying she represents experimentation, not substitution. Adding, much of my work has always been about holding up a mirror to society through satire, and this is no different. Right? And so as we wait to see how all of this plays out, I gotta ask you, what are your thoughts, opinions, and reactions to what she said there, as well as the whole situation, especially because she also said over the weekend that many companies were quietly embracing AI and that major projects were soon to be announced. So then from that, I have one final thing today. I'm very excited about it, and that is that I wanted to announce that I'm launching a brand new podcast with Alex Perlman called Crashing Out. It's a once-a-week Wednesday podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If the Philip DeFranco show is 90% news and 10% reactions and opinion, this is kind of the flip of that. Going back and forth with a new friend in the space about the state of the world and the last week of news. And I recently had Alex on as a guest for my In Good Faith podcast. I had such a great time. I was like, let's do this every week. And we actually just finished recording the first episode. It comes out tomorrow morning. So one, definitely go subscribe to that channel. It's the top link in the description, top link in the comment section. And two, here's a small taste.
Let's talk about the Saudis.
Uh-oh. What do you want to say about the Saudis? Those The people that are actually sponsoring today's show.
Oh, no. The Saudis have bought this show as well. Is this
Already.
our big sponsor?
Yeah.
Our opening sponsor. We already immediately being, guys, Riyadh season is here. And make sure that you hop on a plane directly over there where you can have a great time. You can see such comedians as Guy Who Said He Can Say Whatever He Wants and No One Can Stop Him. And dude who is just facing a lot of charges.
So often it seems like he doesn't know what is actually happening, or in that case, maybe real.
I think the thing is, I think he's such a liar that he believes his own lies. And when you start stacking them on top of each other, it ends up becoming like an Ouroboros of lies, right? So like inside of these different things, like there's the medbed thing is crazy. I'm sorry. This is going to be one of the, there's certain
They're real.
things. Yeah, I know.
They're real, Alex.
But it was a video of himself. Like everybody's obsessing about the fact that he shared a video about a conspiracy theory called medbeds. And for your listeners who didn't watch your show from Monday where you covered this, because I did, I watched your show, and because I enjoy the Phil DeFranco show. Guys, like and subscribe, and make sure you follow Phil wherever he is on YouTube. But the medbed conspiracy thing, that's one thing. Yeah, and that's crazy. If a normal politician, right, if a normal congressman, if a normal governor shared a medbed video, okay. But we're glossing over the fact that there was an AI video of Donald Trump himself saying medbeds are good and real, and that he has signed legislation giving everybody medbed tickets or whatever it was. And then his daughter-in-law is in the video, and he was just like, I guess I did that. That sounds like a thing I'd do. I sound like a good president. What a time. And he just hit, like he just hit send. And like the question I keep having between this and then last night with the Chuck Schumer, the Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries sombrero video, where are these coming from?
And with that, it brings us to the end of this video. You've also got more click away. You've got my brand new In Good Faith podcast with Tim Miller. Fantastic episode. You've also got the newest episode of the Philip DeFranco Show you haven't watched yet right here. And or if you want to subscribe to the new channel, our first video is going out tomorrow. It's my new podcast with Alex Perlman, Crashing Out. You can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Links in the description down below. I think this is just how I make new friends now. I just do podcasts, but it is a good one. I think you'll love it. Definitely subscribe. That said, thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.